My name is Eliza Harper. I'm 32, and I remember exactly what I was wearing when my father asked me to give my brother $10,000. A navy wool blazer, secondhand but tailored, crisp white shirt, brown heels I had finally splurged on after my first full-time promotion. I'd worn them because my boss, a woman I respected more than anyone, had once said, always dress for the job 2 steps ahead. So I did, even when no one noticed. Especially when no one noticed. We were at Olive Ridge, that overpriced steakhouse just outside town that pretends it's fine dining because they swirl balsamic reduction on everything. It was my dad's 60th birthday. My mother had picked the place because the walls were wood-paneled and the napkins were black. Classy, not loud. My brother Ryan had picked the wine. He always did. He didn't pay for it. He just picked it. I should have known something was coming. My dad had been too quiet through the appetizers. My mother kept adjusting her necklace, a nervous tic she developed after turning 50. And Ryan was bouncing his leg like a child trying to pretend he wasn't waiting for dessert. He hadn't looked at me all night, which ironically meant he was about to. Eliza, my dad said, mid-sip of his Malbec. He always said my name like it belonged to someone he used to know. We were talking earlier. Your brother's got something exciting brewing. Ryan looked up, smiled. Too quickly. Oh? I said politely, setting down my fork. What's brewing? Business idea, he said. New kind of eco-charter company down on Lake Matson. Solar-powered boat. No fumes? All vibes? All vibes. That was Ryan. My mother jumped in. He's so passionate about it, honey, and you've always been the one with a good head for numbers. Maybe you two could, talk. I blinked. Sure. What's the model? Projected earnings? Ryan's mouth twisted. I mean, I'm still finalizing the plan, but I've got quotes. Real equipment. Hull design. Custom seating with speakers built in. Hull design, I repeated. Sounds comprehensive. My dad leaned forward then, elbows on the table. That was his tell. He only broke posture when he wanted something, and when he did, he played it like a favor to you. It's just a little family loan, he said. 10,000, not even an investment, just a leg up. You'll help your brother, right? I didn't answer. Not immediately. $10,000. I had worked 12-hour shifts for that, skipped vacations, said no to upgraded health plans, postponed dentist appointments, declined bachelorette parties. I lived in a 1-bedroom above a bakery with thin walls and no parking because it meant I could sock away more every month into my future fund. I didn't even know what future meant, just something better, something mine. 10,000 wasn't pocket change. It was sacrifice stacked over time like bricks in a house no one else could see. But here was Ryan, pitching a boat he hadn't built on a lake he didn't live near with a business plan that sounded more like a playlist. I looked at my father. Has he already tried the bank? My dad waved it off. Loan officers don't see potential. They want credit history, safe bets. That's not what entrepreneurship is about. I turned to Ryan. You missed 3 car payments last year. He shrugged. I had some stuff going on. Mental health matters, you know. I'm in a better place now. Mental health matters. Of course it does, but Ryan had a way of using good language to cover bad patterns. And the loan, I asked, would be paid back when? Soon, he said. 2-3 months tops. I smiled, not because I believed him, but because I didn't want to cry. My mother jumped in. Sweetheart, it's just 10,000. Think of how much you've saved. You're doing so well. She said it like it was a compliment. It didn't feel like one. I stared at my plate. Half a filet mignon, cold now. My dad's hand was still gripping his wine glass, not tightly, but expectantly. Ryan was leaning back like a man waiting for applause. And my mother had that hopeful look she wore when she thought she'd just successfully avoided a conflict. Okay, I said. The word fell out of my mouth before I'd made peace with it. My mother exhaled. Thank you, baby. My father nodded. That's my girl. Ryan grinned. You won't regret this. He said it like I had a choice. Later that night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off and my heels still on. My email draft was open. The subject line, family loan agreement. I stared at the blinking cursor and felt nothing. Not pride, not even anger. Just wait. I typed slowly, like if I wrote the terms carefully enough, it might matter. As discussed, this $10,000 is a personal loan between Eliza Harper and Ryan Harper to be repaid in full by... I paused and backspaced. I knew I'd never see the money again. So I sent it without a due date, just a wish dressed up in legal words. A week later, the wire went through. $10,000. Just like that. I made sure to screenshot the transfer confirmation. I saved it in a folder named Temporary Decisions, and for a while I said nothing. When my boss complimented my performance, I didn't mention I'd just emptied my savings. When my friend invited me on a cabin trip, I didn't say I couldn't go anymore. I smiled. I said I was budgeting for something big, which was true. I just hadn't known it would be someone else's dream. Ryan didn't call to say thank you. He sent a voice memo. 2 seconds long. You're a lifesaver. Seriously, you won't regret this. And for a moment I let myself believe that maybe I wouldn't, until the Instagram post. It showed up on my feed on a Sunday afternoon, sandwiched between a coworker's engagement photos and a food blogger's croissant tower. The caption read, "Meet Her Majesty. First ride on the water today. Dreams really do float." In the photo, Ryan stood shirtless on a pristine white deck, sunglasses perched on his forehead. A girl I didn't know was wrapped around his side, laughing into the wind, and behind them, a boat. Not eco-friendly, not solar-powered, not a prototype, just a luxury toy brand new, motorized, champagne in the cup holders. He hadn't even named it after the business. He named it after himself. I zoomed in on the hull. Harper's Majesty. Of course he had. I didn't text him. I didn't text my parents either. Instead, I saved the post. Then I saved the follow-up, a selfie video of him cruising across the lake yelling, "Summer 2.0, baby, catch us if you can." Catch us if you can. I closed the app and opened Zillow. I didn't know what I was looking for. Not yet. But I knew where Ryan lived. I knew who owned the house. And I knew that, for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to clean up his mess. I was going to own it. There's something about betrayal that doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it just drips, like a faucet you forgot to shut tight. Annoying at first, then invasive, and then, one morning, you wake up drowning. For me, the first drip came on a Tuesday. I was microwaving leftover soup, eating standing up, the way I always do on back-to-back deadline weeks when I got a text from Melissa. She works in real estate and used to date Ryan, back in his man bun and vape phase. She's sharp, knows numbers better than most people know their own birthdays, the kind of person who pays attention when no one else does. Melissa, 6:42 p.m. Did you see this yet? It was a screenshot of a Zillow listing. Lake Matson, a 2-bedroom vacation rental, dock access, private jetty. And in the photos, Ryan. Again. This time in aviators, standing on a boat I recognized immediately, champagne in hand, grinning like a man who just won something. I hadn't seen this post. I wasn't even following him anymore. Me. Where is this from? Melissa. His girlfriend's page. Public. I clicked the link she sent and scrolled. The caption read, "Can't believe you surprised me with this. You deserve everything. Is Captain King, your all mine tossed lake life." There were 4 photos. One on the deck, one at the dock, one in the hot tub on the vacation house patio, one of the girl long legs, tight smile, posing next to a custom boat nameplate, Harper's Majesty. Again, that stupid name made it feel like a taunt. I didn't even know her. I didn't need to. What I did know was that Ryan had told our parents he was staying with a friend near Lake Matson, figuring out logistics for the charter company. There was no charter company, no business model, no solar-powered anything. He had used my loan for leisure, a house rental, a champagne-stocked boat, an influencer starter kit. And maybe I could have stomached the lie if it had been private, quiet, embarrassing, human. But this was theater. He didn't just lie, he performed it. The next drip came at work. I was walking back from a client review meeting when Sasha, my assistant, flagged me down. "Hey, there's a guy at reception asking for you. Says he's your brother?" My stomach dipped. "What does he want?" She shrugged. "Said it's urgent?" I turned the corner and there he was in my office lobby, wearing a backwards cap and mirrored shades, like he was hiding from a paparazzi that didn't exist. "Eliza," he said too loudly, arms out like this was some sitcom reunion. "Oh, heads up. What's up, sis? I'm probably going to be a few weeks late before I could dodge it." That I smelled sunscreen and something sweet. Probably whatever drink he'd had before showing up here. "Wait, didn't Dad tell you?" "I was in the area. I moved out," he said, leasing like the beach was anywhere near my office, while I figured out the boat deal. We never text anymore. He rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah. You know that house on Crosswell I've been at? He gave Sasha a short-term lease. She's always like the owner's flexible. Full-speed spreadsheet. It's a cool setup. She's chill. I smiled at Sasha, tight-lipped, some retiree who moved to Florida or something. You can't just show up at my job, I send the rent to her cousin. Relax. Or you act like I'm about to get you fired. I forget. What do you know how these boomers are always outsourcing stuff? Can't a brother check in on his investor? Crosswell was the property he claimed belonged to. How? A friend. It wasn't. He was renting it. That wasn't the lie. The lie was that he could afford it. Because just last week, Mom had told me he was back on his feet, looking at lakefront investments. And now here he was, standing in my lobby, drunk off charm and sunscreen, telling me his rent might bounce. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. "That's it?" He blinked. "Yeah." I wasn't ready to say what I wanted to say. Not yet. That night, I did what I always do when my brain won't stop circling the same 3 humiliating thoughts. I cooked, chopped vegetables until my fingers ached, stirred soup I didn't want, toasted almonds for no one but myself. I didn't eat, I just plated it, then scraped it all into Tupperware, control in edible form. Then I opened my laptop, typed in, Crosswell rental property owner, and I found her, Patricia Lawrence, age 67, moved to Florida 6 months ago. Her nephew had been managing the lease. The listing had quietly expired, the page was still cached, and I saved every photo. The real estate firm listed was small, local. I knew someone who'd interned there during college. I messaged her on LinkedIn. Hey, random Q, any idea if the Crosswell property is still on the market? Her reply came in 6 minutes. Actually, yes. The owner's looking to offload fast. Her nephew's getting married and doesn't want to manage the lease anymore. Interested? Maybe. Off market? Could be arranged. Want me to intro? Please. I didn't make a decision that night. I just saved the message and rewatched the Instagram video of Ryan doing a cannonball off his boat while the caption read, "If you're not living, you're just existing." On Friday, my mother called. "Eliza, sweetie, did you see Ryan's photos? He's just glowing lately. I think the boat thing's really bringing him confidence." I closed my eyes. "Mom, he's using the loan for vacations." "Oh, don't be so rigid. You're always working. Let him have a little freedom." "You do realize he told me he was starting a business?" "Well, maybe it'll become one. Dreams take time." "It wasn't a gift, Mom. It was money I needed." There was a pause. "Oh, honey, but you're doing so well." That phrase again. Doing well. As if stability meant abundance. As if my caution was evidence of excess. "You can't keep covering for him," I said. I just don't think it's worth the drama. It's only money." That's when it hit me. To them, it wasn't about the $10,000. It was about roles. I was the helper, the backup, the one who caught the fall so no one had to hear the sound. That weekend, I drove by the Crosswell property. I didn't get out, just circled once. Watched as Ryan pulled into the driveway in board shorts and flip-flops carrying a flat of White Claws. He didn't see me. He was laughing, carefree, free. The kind of free you can only be when someone else pays for your mistakes. I rolled down my window and listened. The sound of music from his car, the soft thunk of the door slamming shut, the muffled laughter from the back patio. I took a photo of the mailbox and saved it. Then I drove home and opened the message from the real estate contact. "Still interested?" This time I replied, "Yes. Let's talk numbers." I was 9 the first time I lied for Ryan. He had broken the handle off Mom's antique jewelry box, the carved walnut one with the silk lining and the tiny brass latch shaped like a bird. It had belonged to her grandmother. She kept it on her dresser like it was sacred. We weren't allowed to touch it, but Ryan did. He was 5, curious, clumsy, reckless. I still remember the sound of it snapping. The crack of wood on wood. His little hands scrambling to piece it back together like the panic didn't hit him until the damage had been done. Then he looked at me. "Eliza, please." He didn't say sorry. He said, "Please." So I walked downstairs when Mom called for us. And when she saw the box in pieces, a bird latch dangling, and her face contorted in that specific kind of fury saved for precious things, I stepped forward. "I dropped it," I said. Ryan stood behind me, silent, small. I don't remember what the punishment was. I just remember how light Ryan was on his feet the next day, skipping through the house, singing some cartoon jingle, like guilt wasn't part of his vocabulary. That moment, that quiet little crime scene should have taught me something. It didn't, because I did it again. And again. High school, sophomore year. Ryan got caught skipping school, not once, not twice, 6 times. He had forged a note, said it was from Mom. The vice principal called home. Mom was furious. Dad was livid. Ryan denied everything. "You think I'm stupid enough to use Mom's handwriting?" he said. "Please, ask Eliza. She was the one who wrote that." I had been in biology class. I hadn't written a thing. But when Dad asked me in that tone that made it clear I was expected to smooth it over, I hesitated. And Ryan, cool as anything, said, "Tell them, Liz." So I nodded. A shallow lie. An easy one. And somehow it still left a burn. College. I got a partial scholarship. Worked 2 part-time jobs. Lived in a dorm the size of a closet and learned how to cook pasta 27 different ways. My textbooks were all secondhand, my laptop crashed twice a week, and I still managed to graduate with honors. Ryan, he failed out of his first university. My parents let him come home, enrolled him in a private arts program, gave him my old car. "It's not a competition," Mom said when I asked why he didn't have to repay his tuition like I did. "He's just finding his path." "What am I doing?" I asked. "You're always fine, Eliza," she said. "You don't need as much." She meant it as a compliment. It felt like a dismissal. There's a particular kind of hurt that comes from being the safe one. People think safety is strength. that it's armor, that it means you feel nothing. But being the safe one means you get to be the net, not the flyer. The one catching people mid-fall whether they asked for it or not. It means your wins don't shine because they're expected. And your losses? Well, those are your fault. After all, you're supposed to know better. When I was 26, I got promoted to associate director. It was the kind of job title that didn't mean much outside the company but meant everything inside of it. I'd worked for it, bled for it, skipped birthdays and baby showers and long weekends to make that title real. I told my family over dinner. Midway through my sentence, Ryan interrupted. "Guess what?" he said. "I'm starting a podcast." Everyone turned to him. My mother clapped. "Oh, that's so creative." My father nodded. "You always did have a voice for radio." I sat there, my mouth still open, the congratulations never arriving. It wasn't new. It just stopped being surprising. The same pattern played out at holidays, at birthdays, at every family milestone that became another stage for Ryan to perform and for me to applaud. So when he asked for that $10,000, it wasn't out of nowhere. It was just the latest episode, the latest expectation. "Eliza will help," my dad had said. "She always does." And I did, because I had always done it, until now. The day I got the call from the real estate agent, I was at my desk. The office was unusually quiet, one of those rare late afternoons when everything slows down and you can hear your own breath. I answered on the second ring. "Hi, Eliza. This is Callie from Redstone Realty. Just wanted to touch base about the Crosswell property." "Yes," I said. "I've been reviewing the documents." "Great. So here's the thing. The owner's nephew, the one managing the lease, he's open to a quick sale, especially if it means not dealing with a vacate and clean situation. It's not on the MLS yet, but he'd be happy to start the process if you're serious." "I'm serious," I said. And I was, because for the first time in my life, I was tired of being the net. That night, I pulled out a box from the back of my closet. Inside was every tax return I'd filed since graduating. Pay stubs, savings certificates, a hardbound notebook with scribbled numbers and goalposts. Down payment, 30% emergency fund, 6 months, long-term projection. Home equity ROI by 40. I had been building towards something, a dream I couldn't name, a future shaped like autonomy. Now it had a name. Crosswell. My lawyer friend helped me draw up the offer. All cash, clean title, close within 30 days. The seller agreed in less than 48 hours. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not Ryan, not even my closest friends. Some victories don't need to be announced. Some are sweeter when they're just yours. I signed the final paperwork 2 weeks later in a conference room that smelled like coffee and ink. The real estate agent offered me a handshake. The lawyer smiled and passed me a folder with the title deed. It was done. I owned it. The house Ryan had been bragging about leasing, it was mine now. The new landlord? Me. I didn't text him. I didn't show up. I just waited, because the next rent check was due in 5 days, and when it arrived, it would come to me. The pattern hadn't changed, but I had. For the first time, I wasn't playing my part. And Ryan? He had no idea that the stage was now mine. There wasn't a single moment when the switch flipped. No grand insult, no thrown glass, no explosive confrontation that changed everything in an instant. It was smaller than that, quieter, but sharper than anything else. It was a voicemail. It was Sunday, late morning, the kind of late that makes you feel like you're behind even when you aren't. I was folding laundry, half listening to an old podcast when I saw my phone light up. Missed call. Dad. No message at first. Then, a second later, the notification popped up. One new voicemail. I paused the podcast and hit play. "Hey kiddo, just checking in. Hope you're not working too hard. Listen, your mom and I were talking with Ryan yesterday, and he mentioned something about falling a bit behind on rent. I told him not to stress. It's not like the landlord's gonna evict him over a late check. Anyway, if you can spot him a couple weeks, that'd really help him stay afloat. I told him you'd understand. You always do. Love you." He hung up before the machine even beeped. Just like that. It took me a second to process what I'd heard. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, my folded towel forgotten in my lap. They didn't know I owned the house. Not my dad. Not my mom. Definitely not Ryan. They still thought I was just available. Just a safety net. The fallback girl. Dad hadn't even asked. He hadn't said, "Can you?" He'd said, "You will." And then he hung up. That was it. That was the moment. The first thing I did was pour a glass of water. I drank it slowly. The second thing I did was open my email. Subject line, Notice of Lease Transfer. To Ryan Harper. From Crosswell Properties, LLC. Attachment, updated rental agreement plus direct deposit form. The LLC was mine. Formed 2 weeks prior. Paperwork notarized. bank account connected, clean, professional. There was no mention of my name, just terms, formal language, and a new payment address. I hit send, and I waited. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Ryan, 3:04 p.m. You just took it. What the hell is this lease transfer thing? I said calmly. You got hacked or something? With my money. No. After you lied about yours? So I didn't. Crosswell Properties. You said it was for a charter business. The typing disappeared, but you didn't. Reappeared. So what? Ryan, people change plans. You bought the house? No, I said. Correct. You just never had one. Ryan, he shook his head. Me. You really think you're better than me, don't you? Ryan, no. Are you serious? I said again. I just stopped pretending you were better than me. I didn't pick up. That hit harder than I expected. Declined. He went quiet. Then came the voicemail. Then softer. Eliza, what the hell is charging me rent? You bought the house? At least give me a break. Why wouldn't you tell me? Wow. What kind of weird power trip is this? He looked around like he was searching for something else to blame. Some other invisible villain in the room. Jesus. Then he looked seriously messed up. You're a lot colder than you used to be. Didn't say goodbye. No. That night I said, staring him dead in the eye. I didn't drink. I'm just finally room temperature. And I opened a folder on my desktop I hadn't touched in years. He just was titled, didn't family stuff, didn't say goodbye. Inside were scans of old birthday cards, the lease one-liner emails, new rate, the last photo we took as a family of four before Ryan's first big screw up the time he wrecked my dad's Jeep and somehow got me grounded because I should have known better than to lend him gas money. It wasn't revenge. And there, it wasn't buried in a subfolder, was a copy of the $10,000 wire transfer confirmation, been draining me for decades, one drop at a time. Real. And now I stared at it for a long time to feel the leak. Then I clicked back to the voicemail from Dad. It came in the mail. I told him you'd understand. Generic. You always do. The kind you almost throw out clanged in my skull like a bell. You always do. A picture of Lake Matson as if compassion was a duty I owed. As if understanding was something I'd been drafted into. Dreaming of lakefront living. I remembered being 10 and waking up early on Saturday mornings to clean the kitchen before our parents got up because Ryan never did. But Mom used to say, it was 5 minutes from Crosswell. Such a good helper, such a big girl. Normally I toss it. It wasn't praise. Because in that moment something clicked. That was my role. Not loud, not sharp. Helper, just cleaner, cover, I put the postcard on the fridge and with a magnet, landlord. Not as a reminder. Ryan showed up at my apartment 2 days later. I ran into my neighbor he was coming. He's 43. Balding, he never did when he wanted something. A local building inspector who always has sharp, some new gossip he shares like he's doing me a favor. I opened the door a crack. We were both bringing groceries up the stairs when he nodded toward me. Sweatpants. You're the new landlord on Crosswell, right? On his face that I'd seen 100 times as a kid whenever he actually got in trouble. It's a small town. People talk. Are you serious? Especially when the old tenant keeps calling the owner trying to get the rent lowered. Walked in. I laughed. You bought the house? Tracks. Behind my back? He leaned in a little. It's not your house, about to tell me something that shouldn't be interesting, but you knew I was living there. You know the guy who used to own Crosswell? Retired. It was never yours. His cousin owns 2 more houses on that same block. He's looking to sell, I heard. You're really doing this? Both of them? Like what, you're some kind of real estate mogul now. Wants out before winter. I said. Market's just tired now. He laughed. Something in me went still. Because Ryan, as reckless as he was, tired of pretending that helping you doesn't cost for a reason. He paused. Proximity to the lake. That stopped him. Quiet road. I saw something flicker across his face. And he was right. Maybe guilt. The market was heating up. Maybe just confusion. People wanted backyards and breathing room. And I had leverage now. What things cost not just emotional leverage legal. You think I had a signed lease? He said. I had cash voice rising. I had equity. You think I don't feel the pressure? More importantly, I had silence. I didn't ask for this house. Ryan still didn't know I had formed an LLC. Still didn't know I had bought the house through a blind trust. To him, the real landlord was still some faceless management firm, not his older sister with a long memory and a short fuse. I could do more than just stop the pattern now. I could own it. That night, I opened a spreadsheet. I filled in the numbers. Crosswell rent, steady taxes, manageable maintenance, minimal savings cushion. Enough I added 2 columns, property A, next door, property B, down the block. I ran the scenarios. Then I called Callie, the real estate agent who had closed Crosswell for me. Hypothetically, I said, how complicated would it be to quietly acquire the other 2 houses on that block? Depends. Hypothetically, are you pre-approved? Hypothetically, I replied. I'm a cash buyer. Callie didn't laugh. She just said, let me make a call. The next day, she emailed me a private listing packet. Both homes were similar to Crosswell. Early 90s bills, good structure, a little dated, but solid and rentable. She even included pre-filled projections on rental yield. Both owners motivated, she wrote. Could go under asking if we move fast. I stared at the numbers. I didn't have to do it. I'd already won, hadn't I? I owned the house he lived in. He paid me now. I could stop here. But some part of me, the part that remembered every Christmas dinner where I was the one washing dishes, while Ryan played beer pong in the garage, that part didn't want to stop. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I had let this family define me for so long. Now I was building something they couldn't reach. 3 days later, I made an offer on a property A. Below market. All cash. Quick close. The owner accepted within the hour. A week later, I toured property B. This one needed work, a new roof, bathroom updates. But the backyard opened straight onto the water line. It was the kind of place someone like Ryan would one day dream of leasing again after he burned through his next idea. So I made a second offer, contingent on inspection. It passed. I closed both properties in under 30 days, 3 houses, 1 block, all under my name. No fanfare, no announcement, just keys, just signatures, just a quiet accumulation of power. My parents still didn't know. They thought I was working on a little investment project. Ryan hadn't asked. He'd stopped texting after the rent hike, stopped calling after the late fee clause. Good, because I was no longer interested in conversations with people who only spoke in needs. I was building something now, not just wealth, but distance and dignity. A few weeks later, I saw Ryan again. It was unplanned. I was driving by Crosswell for a contractor walk through Property A needed new gutters when I spotted him in the driveway. He was sitting on the tailgate of his truck barefoot, eating chips out of a bag, talking to a girl with a voice that carried too far. I almost kept driving, but I didn't. I parked. He didn't see me until I was 10 feet away. He stood up fast, chips spilling. "Lise," he said, blinking like I was some hallucination. Hey. The girl stared at me, didn't say hello. "You live around here?" he asked, casual. I smiled. "You could say that. I thought you worked in the city." "I do." We stood there in silence for a second. The girl went back inside. He scratched the back of his neck. "So, listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about the rent. I know it's market rate and all, but things have been kind of tight and I was wondering..." "No?" He paused. "What?" "No, Ryan. No negotiations, no breaks, no deferments?" He blinked. "Wow. You're a tenant," I said calmly. "Not a favor." "That's cold." That's adulthood." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. "Damn," he said, shaking his head. "You really think you're the boss now, huh?" I tilted my head. "I am the landlord, Ryan." I waited. Let the silence settle. Let the words sink. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because for the first time maybe ever, he realized I wasn't playing anymore. I was done catching, done folding, done giving. Now, I was holding the deed. Some people buy property to feel successful. Some buy it for legacy. Me? I bought it for silence. The kind that comes after years of explaining, defending, swallowing, minimizing. I bought it to never need permission again. After the Crosswell trio, I thought I'd feel something. Victory, satisfaction, closure maybe. But mostly I felt still. Not numb, not empty, just done. Like the version of me who used to need their approval had finally packed her bags and left. No note, no forwarding address, and the version left behind? She had more to do. It started when I found the ledger. It was a battered notebook I hadn't touched in years back from when I first started budgeting in college. I flipped through it one night after dinner. It was filled with margins of hopeful math and anxious scribbles. Emergency fund, 3 months. Do not lend out student loan refund. If dad asks for car money, say no. Spoiler, I didn't say no, but that last note stung the most. Because there it was, the seed of awareness. Even then, I knew the pattern. I named it. I still let it happen. Not anymore. The next move came quietly. A text from Callie, my real estate agent. "Callie, 10:12 a.m. One of your neighbors is asking about selling. You want the first look?" I stared at the message. Then I called her. The property was 2 blocks over. Larger lot, backed onto the woods. The kind of place that looked like it belonged to someone with 2 golden retrievers and a Suburban. Turns out the seller was moving to Arizona to be closer to his daughter. The asking price was high, but I had leverage now comparables from my other purchases, market dips, seller urgency. We negotiated. In 6 days we had a deal. I wired the down payment from the LLC's account. I didn't name the LLC after myself. I named it after my great-grandmother, the one whose walnut jewelry box I lied for when I was 9. Her name was stitched into the deed, not mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was hiding, because I was done broadcasting. I used to think I needed their recognition, their pride, their pat on the head. But all I'd ever gotten was silence when I needed support and noise when I needed rest. So now I moved in silence. Let the numbers speak. Let the deeds whisper what they never saw coming. The 4th property gave me options. I could flip it, rent it, hold it, refinance. But what it really gave me was a new vantage point. Because one of its tenants used to rent from the same property manager Ryan complained about last year, the one he said was shady and only responds when you threaten legal. So I called her. Her name was Nadia. She was 52nd, blunt, efficient, all backbone. We met for coffee. "You're Ryan Harper's sister?" I smiled. "That obvious?" She sipped her espresso. "He tried to get out of 3 months' rent with a forged hospital bill. Sent it in a JPEG. I laughed. "Sounds right." We talked numbers, structures, off-market listings, eviction horror stories. Then she leaned in. You thinking of building a portfolio? I nodded. She stared at me for a beat. Then she said, call me if you want a manager. I clean house better than a hurricane. By the end of that month, I had a team. Not big, just enough. Nadia, the manager, a lawyer friend from college who now handled my contracts, an accountant I trusted from my firm, someone who kept things clean, tight, audit-proof, and me, always watching the numbers, always remembering the silence I came from. Then came the family dinner. It wasn't planned, just one of those let's all get together meals that my mother orchestrated whenever she felt like pretending we were whole. I almost said no, but I didn't. Not because I owed them, because I didn't anymore. That's what freedom feels like, saying yes because you want to, not because you have to. The dinner was at my parents' house. Roast chicken, overcooked potatoes, the usual. Ryan showed up late. He had a new girlfriend. This one wore fake lashes and called my dad sir, even though he waved it off. She brought a salad, store-bought. Nobody touched it. Ryan was all charm, big laughs, bigger stories. I'm working on a lake house deal, he said between bites. Not ready to go public yet, but it's going to be a game changer. I took a sip of wine and said nothing. My mother beamed. He's really coming into his own, she said to me later in the kitchen. You must be proud. I smiled. Then I rinsed the dishes. After dinner, Dad walked me out to my car. You know, he said, your brother's been talking about starting a new project. Something real this time. Not just ideas. I think he's ready. I nodded. He continued. He might ask for a little help again, but you're doing well, right? There it was again. That same sentence. You're doing well. Not a question. A statement. A permission slip to be used against me. I closed my car door gently. Then I looked at him. Dad, I said, I bought 4 houses this year. His brows lifted. You what? 4. In your zip code. All in cash. All under my LLC. He blinked. But why? I got tired of pretending stability means infinite generosity. He opened his mouth to say something. I didn't let him. I smiled. And for the record, Ryan's rent is due in 3 days. I started the engine. He stepped back. Wait, he said. You still? Yup, still the landlord. I pulled out of the driveway without waiting for his reaction, because I didn't need it anymore. That night, Ryan texted, Ryan, 9:48 p.m. So you're really doing this landlord thing, huh? I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, Ryan, guess you think you're better now. Still no reply. Then Ryan, just remember who helped you when you needed rides in high school? And there it was. The past, weaponized. A ride from 15 years ago, dredged up like it was currency. I stared at the screen. Then I blocked his number. Not out of anger, out of peace. Some lines don't need crossing, they just need closing. It's strange how fast a pattern can collapse when no one's feeding it. No yelling, no confrontation, no dramatic storm out. Just silence. That's how you know the shift has happened. When they stop calling because they know what your answer will be. It had been 4 weeks since the family dinner, 3 since I blocked Ryan's number, 2 since I finalized the 5th property, a duplex on Hamilton with long-term tenants and a steady return, and 1 since my mother left a voicemail that said, and I quote, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope everything's okay. Your brother said you might be upset. We're all still a family, you know. At the end of the day, we need to support each other. I didn't return the call. I just forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer with the subject line, in case we ever need context, because support, in their vocabulary, had always meant extraction. By the time October rolled around, I was operating at scale. Nadia had full oversight on all leases. Repairs were handled within 72 hours. Rent collection was automated. I had policies, late fees, a waiting list. What started as one house became an ecosystem, self-sufficient, predictable, stable, not a safety net, a system. And me? I wasn't watching anymore. I was building. The shift wasn't just in my finances. It was in how I walked into rooms, how I answered questions, how I carried my weekends. I stopped asking for validation, stopped pausing before saying no, stopped rehearsing explanations in my head before sending emails that enforced boundaries. The shift was internal first, but slowly people noticed. At work, my manager asked if I'd considered applying for the regional VP position. I said no, not because I wasn't qualified. Because I didn't need the title anymore to feel valuable. That was the old game, the one where I kept chasing recognition that never landed. Now I played a different game. Return on investment, time autonomy, emotional neutrality. One night, Nadia called. You're gonna want to hear this, she said. Ryan had emailed the LLC, formally, through the tenant portal. It was a request to sublease the Croswell house to his friend, a temporary arrangement due to unexpected travel. Nadia sent me the full thread. The friend? A DJ. The travel? A 6-week business retreat in Bali. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, because it was so him. Always chasing the next wave of credibility. Always with borrowed ideas and someone else's money. I emailed back. Request denied. Lease does not permit subletting. Any such arrangement will be considered a breach. 2 minutes later, Nadia called again. He called me, she said. Tried to negotiate. What did you say? I said I don't make exceptions, especially not for tenants who've been late 3 times in 6 months. I paused. Was he mad? Oh yeah, said something about calling his sister. I laughed again. Let him try. Later that week, I visited Property 5, the duplex. I parked across the street, leaned against the hood of my car, and just watched. Kids riding bikes, someone planting mums, a woman walking her dog. My tenants weren't rich, they weren't flashy, but they were steady. That's what I'd built. Not a revenge fantasy, not a victory lap. A small world where things worked because I made them work. Quiet systems, tidy boundaries, and no one in it who made me small. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was Ryan. So that's it? You don't even talk to me now? After everything? His voice cracked not from sadness, from disbelief, as if it had never occurred to him that my silence could be permanent. You're really gonna evict your own brother over a sublease clause? What happened to you? This isn't you, Les. Ah, the classic. Not angry, not even manipulative, just disoriented. Because the version of me he knew, the one who covered for him, loaned him money, made herself smaller, she was gone. And in her place, someone with keys, deeds, on contracts, control. I didn't respond. Not to him. Not to the next voicemail. Or the email after that. Or the passive-aggressive meme he posted about greedy landlords that my cousin forwarded with a side-eye emoji. Because I wasn't fighting. I was finished. A week later, Nadia texted. Crosswell payment posted. On time, no notes. I replied with a thumbs up. That weekend, I went to an open house. Not to buy, just to look. It was a craftsman bungalow with stained glass windows and a clawfoot tub. Too expensive, too quaint. But I walked the rooms slowly. Felt the echo of empty space. Not lonely. Just ready. And when the agent asked if I was looking for myself or for investment, I said, not sure yet. Because that's what the shift gives you. Options. Time. No scripts to perform. No roles to uphold. No narratives to defend. Just decisions. Clean. Clear. Yours. I didn't plan the reveal. I wasn't waiting with some gotcha moment or camera-ready confrontation. Because revenge, at least the kind that matters, doesn't need an audience. It just needs timing and clarity. It began with a mistake. Not mine. Ryan's. Again. I was at Nadia's office for our quarterly check-in. We were reviewing maintenance costs, renewal rates, and a few red flags in a duplex lease that smelled like a roommate situation gone sour. She paused midway through the report. Oh, meant to mention, she said, sliding her phone across the table. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a screenshot, a Facebook post. Ryan Harper. Landlords are leeches. They sit on the property they didn't earn and raise rent on people actually trying to build something. Parasites in suits. Beneath it, a dozen comments, mostly friends piling on, some defending, a few calling him out. But the top comment? It was from my mother. Deborah Harper. That's the problem, honey. Some people forget where they come from once they get a little money. Families should help each other, not profit off them. That stopped me cold. Because she wasn't just talking about landlords, she was talking about me. And suddenly, I understood. They still didn't know. Not really. They didn't know I was the one behind Crosswell Properties, that I'd bought 5 houses, that Ryan's rent, his late fees, his lease, all of it was under my control. They thought I'd given up on real estate. They thought the LLC was some faceless investor group. They thought I'd just moved on. Good. Let them keep thinking that. Because the truth was coming. And it wasn't going to be loud, it was going to be permanent. The opportunity came 2 weeks later, a family gathering, birthday dinner for Dad, his 68th, same living room, same lasagna, same too loud TV in the background. I brought wine, expensive, unopened by the end of the night. Ryan was there, so was his girlfriend, a new one. They didn't sit next to each other. I made small talk with cousins, helped clear plates, the usual, until dessert. That's when Ryan started talking, loudly. So get this, he said, gesturing with his fork. My landlord sends this notice last week, rent's going up again. Can you believe that? After everything I've done for the property, improvements, cleanups, and the guy just jacks up the price. Mom clucked her tongue. Disgusting. Dad shook his head. You should push back, write a letter. I did, Dad. I emailed the management company. No response. Total cowards. Probably some hedge fund owning the place. I took a sip of water, waited, let the silence stretch. Then I spoke, softly, calmly. "That's strange," I said, "because your landlord usually responds quickly." He turned toward me. "What?" I met his eyes. I said, "That's strange. Your landlord's usually very professional." Pause. Dad glanced between us. "Wait, how would you know?" I smiled. Because it was time. The curtain had already been lifted. Now they just needed to look. "I know," I said, "because it's me." They blinked. "What?" Ryan asked, scoffing. "I'm your landlord, Ryan." Silence. "You've been paying rent to Crosswell Properties for over a year. That company is mine. The houses, mine. The lease, I wrote it. The rate increases, my decision." Ryan stared at me like I was speaking a language he'd never heard. "You're lying." "No," I said, "I'm not." He shook his head. "That's not possible. You couldn't have. I bought Crosswell before you defaulted on the second rent payment. I bought the duplex after you trashed my voicemail. I bought the 5th property while you were in Bali." His face turned red. "This is some joke, right?" "No joke." Dad stepped in. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I shrugged. "Because it wasn't your business." Mom opened her mouth, probably to scold. I held up a hand. "Let me finish." I stood slowly. Not dramatic, just deliberate. "I gave you $10,000 when you asked. You used it on a boat. I never got a thank you." I looked at Ryan. "You treated that money like it was disposable, like I was disposable." I turned to my parents. "You encouraged it, because helping Ryan always mattered more than respecting me." "Sweetheart," Mom tried. "Number, you called me greedy. You called me cold. You posted it for the whole world to see." They blinked. Ryan stood. "Okay, so what? You're rich now? That's the point?" "No," I said. "I'm free." He stared at me, eyes wide, mouth open, like he was still trying to catch up to the reality that had already arrived. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table. "To Ryan Harper," I said, "from your landlord." He opened it. Inside, a notice of non-renewal. 60 days, legal, binding, effective immediately. His mouth dropped. "You're kicking me out?" "No," I said. "I'm ending your lease." "But where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. That's your responsibility now." He laughed, bitter, hollow. "You're insane." "No," I said again. "I'm done." And I walked out. No slammed doors, no final word, just steps. Forward. That night, I sat by the window in my apartment. I lit a candle I never used, let the wax melt into a pool of quiet light. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt real, present. No roles to perform, no weight to carry, no one calling me cold for finally protecting what was mine. The first thing that happens when you cut someone off isn't rage, it's denial, then panic, then stories. 3 days after I handed Ryan the non-renewal notice, my cousin texted me a screenshot. It was a post from Ryan's Instagram story, a photo of an empty driveway, captioned, "Evicted by my own sister. Cold world." No names, no context, but the comments, they filled in the blanks. Some were sympathetic, most were passive. A few asked if it was the house with the lake access. I didn't respond, because now he was doing what he always did, weaponizing public sympathy like it was currency. What he didn't realize? You can't shame someone into guilt if they've already made peace with being the villain in your story. Nadia sent me a report that week. He hadn't begun packing, still hosting friends, still leaving trash on the porch, still pretending nothing had changed, but the clock was ticking and he knew it. The day after Nadia's report, I got an email. Subject line, "Let's talk." It was from Ryan. Just those 2 words. No body text, no greeting. I stared at it. Then I archived it. That weekend, I stopped by Property 5. The tenants had renewed their lease. I dropped off a small gift basket, just basics. Soap, a gift card, a thank you note. They were surprised. People always are when landlords are kind, because most don't realize kindness isn't the opposite of boundaries. It's what makes boundaries hold. On the walk back to my car, I saw something. A moving truck. Not Ryan's, a different tenant, one from Property A. He was leaving early, had taken a job out of state. Nadia had already notified me. But what caught my eye was the for sale sign going up next door. New listing, prime corner lot, right next to Crosswell. I walked over, casually glanced at the flyer tacked to the sign. The price was ambitious, but it wasn't impossible. The agent came out smiling. "You looking for yourself or investment?" I paused, then smiled back. "Both." By Monday, I'd made an offer. Not out of spite, not for revenge, for continuity, for control, for quiet. Meanwhile, Ryan was unraveling. He called Nadia twice, left voicemails that alternated between apologies and threats. "I know it's not really your decision," he said in one. "She's not like this. She's just going through something." Going through something. That's how he framed me setting boundaries. as a phase, an illness, a deviation from the girl he once controlled. My mother called next, first with guilt, then with anger. You can't just displace people, Eliza. That's not who we raised you to be. I laughed. Software controlled. No, Mom. You raised me to catch every ball he dropped and pretend I didn't see him throw it. She was quiet. Then she said, "He's your brother." To which I replied, "And I was your daughter." The next week I got another email, this time from a law firm. Not a lawsuit, just noise. A formal inquiry about the lease termination. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He replied with 3 words. Let them try. Nothing came of it. Of course it didn't. Because Ryan didn't want justice. He wanted leverage, and he'd finally run out. 60 days passed, he moved out. Late, bitter. Left 3 bags of trash and a broken towel rack behind. Nadia charged him for the cleanup. I didn't waive it, because sometimes closure costs exactly what it should. A month later, I stood in the Croswell living room, empty, quiet, mine. I walked each room slowly, ran my fingers along the windowsill. I remembered the first time I visited that house. Ryan had shown it off like it was a crown. "This is where I'll write my book," he'd said, pointing at the corner desk. "This is where I'll host game night," motioning to the living room. "This," he'd said, resting his palm on the kitchen counter, "is mine." He never knew he was renting it from me. Now he never would again. I repainted the walls, replaced the broken rack, cleaned out the drawers, not for a new tenant, for me, because I decided to keep it, turn it into a writing retreat, a guest space, a quiet pocket of proof, that I could build something whole, without needing to be hollowed out first. Weeks passed, then one night I got a text from my dad. "Dad, 8:14 p.m. We don't recognize you anymore, just being honest." I read it 3 times. Then I typed back, "That's because, for the first time, I'm not performing." I hit send, blocked the number. The reckoning wasn't loud. It wasn't a showdown or a slammed door. It was subtler than that. A shift in orbit. A choice to stop circling people who mistake gravity for guilt. To stop bleeding for people who never learned how to bandage themselves. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about removal. Of noise. Of false obligation. Of every thread tying me to someone else's comfort at the cost of my own. Ryan would go on to post more stories. Find new places to rent. New people to charm. New sob stories to spin. But I wouldn't see them. Because the final stage of peace isn't watching someone fall. It's not watching at all. Victory didn't come with applause, it came with stillness. A stillness I hadn't known in years. The kind that sits in your chest, not heavy, not light. Just there. A presence instead of a weight. Because the truth is, some endings don't look like triumph. They look like nothing. No text to brace for, no calls to screen, no stories to unhear through your cousin's forwarded screenshots. Just silence and ownership. It had been 3 months since Ryan moved out of Croswell, 6 since the first eviction notice. A year and change since I wired that initial $10,000 to my father's account under the words, "just a little family loan." And now, that house, the one he saw as a stepping stone, a flex, a prop for the image he wanted to wear, was mine. No tenants, no noise, no apologies. I had turned it into a guest space, but not for guests, not yet. Sometimes I stayed there on weekends. Just me, a few books, and the sound of the ceiling fan ticking like a metronome for peace. I repainted the walls a muted blue. Added a couch that folded into a bed, set up a tiny writing desk in the corner, the same corner where Ryan once said he'd write his novel. I didn't write there, not because I was bitter, because I didn't need to. Some rooms are enough just by existing. Nadia ran the properties now, full autonomy. 5 houses, 0 drama. She updated me monthly. Sent spreadsheets that made my old budgeting notebooks look like children's drawings. We were profitable, but more than that, we were calm. No leaks, no panic, no fake hospital bills emailed in JPEGs, just structure, just systems, just quiet. I hadn't seen my parents since the night I blocked my father's number. They didn't try again. And that was the real win. Not silence out of punishment, but silence out of realization. They finally understood. I wasn't coming back. Not to the role, not to the story, not to the table where my worth was measured in usefulness, not presence. I was done performing. One afternoon, I walked past a bookstore downtown. A sign in the window caught my eye. Writer's Retreat, looking for space to host. I stepped inside. The air smelled like cedar wood and old paper. A woman behind the counter looked up. "Can I help you?" "Maybe," I said. "I've got a house. Quiet, lake access, private. Might be perfect for your writers." A week later, I hosted my first retreat. 4 people, 3 days, no agenda. Just writing, meals, solitude. The guests left notes before they checked out. Most peaceful place I've ever stayed. wrote more in one weekend than in 6 months. Something about the house just felt kind. I smiled when I read that last one, because kindness wasn't always soft. Sometimes kindness is saying no. Sometimes it's handing someone a deadline. Sometimes it's refusing to bleed for someone who calls your boundaries cruelty. And sometimes it's building something beautiful on top of the ashes they left. One evening, as I lit the fireplace, I noticed a small envelope tucked behind a stack of mail I'd ignored. No return address. Inside, a photo. Ryan, on a boat, smiling. No note, no explanation, just an image. Still trying to prove something. Still living in projection. Still performing. I put the photo back in the envelope and tossed it into the fire. Not out of hate, out of freedom, because I no longer needed the weight of proof to justify my absence. I had already left the room. Months passed. The lake changed color again. Golden in the mornings, steel by dusk. The air thinned. One morning, I thought about everything I used to believe. That being good meant being available. That being generous meant being broke. That being family meant being silent. I don't believe that anymore. I believe in limits, in language, in leases with end dates. One night, I had a dream. I was back in the old family kitchen, younger, holding a cracked plate, trying to explain why I dropped it. Everyone was talking over me, Dad listing bills, Mom wringing her hands, Ryan on the phone, asking if I could cover the deposit, and me, still holding the plate, still apologizing, even though no one noticed the cut on my hand. I woke up sweating, but not afraid, because that version of me, she doesn't live here anymore. Crosswell was mine now. Not because I'd earned it, not because I'd bought it, because I'd rewritten it. Every corner, every silence, every memory, rewritten not with revenge but with restoration, not with noise but with absence. The final victory wasn't the eviction, it wasn't the portfolio, it wasn't the guest book full of gratitude from people who never once asked me to shrink. The final victory was the fact that on a random Wednesday morning I could look at a quiet house by the water, open the door and feel nothing but breath. No armor, no scripts, just presence and peace. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.